Welcome Gold Delegates. I'm Fleur Bickford, Program Director and MC for Gold Perinatal 2015. I'm here today with Amy Peterson and Mindy Harmer, and we are talking about their upcoming presentation titled Better Bottle Feeding. So thank you so much, Mindy and Amy, for being with us today. And to start with, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the two of you, and maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your professional journey and what you do. And let's start with Mindy.
Hi, I'm Mindy Harmer. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I became interested in helping the little ones when I met up with Amy, and she had concerns regarding bottle feeding and the breastfed baby, or bottle feeding in infants in general. And through this journey, we have come to trust and respect each other. And part of what got me interested in helping Amy is I would help babies become better feeders, whether it be by breastfeeding or bottle feeding, by using the correct bottle. And so we began studying the bottles and their qualities to determine which bottles would help the babies the best.
And this is Amy Peterson. I am an IBCLC, and Mindy and I, we've been working together for about 10 years now, and it's been a fascinating journey. We began with trepidation, a little bit of fear of what the other might do, and just by being open and honest and working together and researching things out, we really trust each other, and we have used our knowledge in helping babies who were unsuccessful breastfeeding return to exclusive breastfeeding, and we've taken that knowledge and broadened it to expand to different babies that may end up using a bottle in a way that is least likely to negatively impact breastfeeding and possibly make breastfeeding even better.
And their overall feeding skills. When you can understand the qualities of a bottle, you can better help just about every baby who is bottle feeding feed more comfortably.
Yeah, I think for me, I've shifted from being a lactation consultant, an IBCLC, to an infant feeding consultant, because really it's all the same thing. It's broadened my knowledge base, and I know Mindy's is broadened as well.
Okay, thank you for that, guys. It sounds like you guys have developed a wonderful partnership. I love, hearing both of you talk about how much you trust one another. That's fantastic. So next question I have is, I know that the two of you co-authored the book, Balancing Breast and Bottle, Reaching Your Breastfeeding Goals. So tell us a little bit about that. And I'm really curious to hear, particularly from you, Amy, about what kind of reaction have you had to the book? Being an IBCLC and working in the field of lactation and yet writing a book about bottle feeding, what sort of reaction have you had from healthcare providers and from parents?
Well, mostly good, but sometimes a little bit mixed. Most of the people who have read the book or interacted with us when we do speaking engagements are thrilled that someone has finally addressed this information, because face it, many of us in the breastfeeding world breastfed our babies. Maybe we don't even have personal experience with bottle feeding. So a lot of the questions that we field from mothers don't really have an answer if we haven't read something about it. And our goal was to bust all the myths out there and really concentrate on what's fact and what's just opinion regarding bottle use in the breastfed baby.
The book started off while we were interacting with our clients, and we would write down this information, and we would write it down again and again and again, and then these chapters developed. Then the chapters developed into a book. When we first started, I have to admit, I wasn't that familiar with the World Health Organization, and I would write things, and Amy would say, "You can't write that. It's against the World Health Organization." So we did quite a bit of research there, and we feel we've aligned with them well. And our goal is just to help every baby feed better, every mom to feel successful, regardless of what feeding method they're using.
And to equip breastfeeding helpers to know that they can educate without bias, and that is not a violation of the WHO code. Educating is not promoting.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think it is so important to distinguish between, promoting or marketing and educating, because certainly two very different things. And Amy, I love how you talk about the fact that, you're starting to see yourself more as an infant feeding consultant as opposed to a lactation consultant. And, I think it's a really good point that, I certainly find in my own practice. I do a lot of teaching about bottle feeding because even though I'm a lactation consultant, a lot of the moms that I see, they come to me because they're struggling, and often that means supplementing, and a lot of them are using bottles, and there's always questions, and
Right.
it's, but I think it's for people who are very familiar with breastfeeding, for yourself as a lactation consultant and for Mindy as a speech language pathologist, and just being familiar with sort of the biological norm, it really, puts you in a good place to be able to provide people with information about, here's how we can mimic that biological norm and make bottle feeding, even better and even easier for these babies so that we're not creating a stressful feeding experience. So I think that's wonderful.
And we really
So,
felt with our combined expertise, we were able to do that in our book without any biases. As a speech language pathologist, I went back to work with both of my children when they were about 6 weeks old. So I did have to combine both breastfeeding and bottle feeding. And with the second, I did more bottle feeding than with the first. So when Amy and I were compiling our information, we felt that we had perspectives from both sides.
wonderful. Okay, so the next question I have is just for you guys to tell us and the delegates who are listening a little bit about what to expect from your presentation. What do you hope delegates will take away from your presentation? Because I know frequently, when I'm talking to people about bottle feeding and, when I'm talking to whether it's mothers or healthcare providers, everyone's kind of, well, bottle feeding, what is there to know about that? It's simple. When in reality, there's, a lot to know about the bottle feeding. So just tell us a little bit about what delegates will be able to take away and apply to their own practices after this presentation.
This presentation has been really fun to put together because we have really brought in more information that we typically don't use for the NICU. This presentation we cover NICU babies and then also babies in the early days before discharge and perhaps shortly thereafter. In this one, part of what we do is look at age development and skill development and how skills are going to come in time regardless of what we're doing with the baby. These are for our little NICU babies, but how we can use the tools that we have to help these babies learn to feed in a non-stressful way so they can go on and feed successfully. So part of what we do in this talk is we look at the parts of a bottle, the universal terms for bottles, and then we zero in on what's available in most North American hospitals. What tools do they have at their discretion? And while some of our talks talk about many feeding tools, we're really focusing on bottles in this one. We're looking at compression versus suction, what the different tools we have, how we can use those tools to help our babies. We look at flow because flow is not a standard in the industry. So we share with the attendees our research of what we've done, and then we actually look at the flow of the different bottles used in many North American hospitals. So hospitals and staff can compare what brands they have and how fast they flow and maybe how they could change up what they're doing to help their babies. We also look at how to use pacing to improve early feeds. And for this objective, it's really neat because we've broken it into pacing with the NICU baby versus pacing with the term baby, because those are actually very different. And we want to make sure that the care we are providing to mothers and babies matches the age of their baby, so it's practical. And then lastly, we look at pacifier guidelines and use. And again, we break that down into NICU versus term babies because there are valid uses for pacifiers I know the breastfeeding world often might be afraid of them, but there are good times to use them, and ways to help mothers use them in a way that doesn't impact breastfeeding. So we're really excited to have attendees come and listen and learn some of these things. I think a lot of times we don't consider bottle use. We just pop it in the baby's mouth and think they'll feed. But we're going to show how to use it as a tool to improve feedings and get babies exclusively feeding without the tube as fast as possible.
Okay, Amy and Mindy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. Your presentation sounds fascinating. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about it. So thank you so much for being with me here today.
You bet. Thanks, Fleur.
Okay, for our delegates who are listening, you will be able to hear more from Mindy and Amy live on Monday, October the 19th at 1900 UTC. And of course, the recording of their presentation will be available throughout the duration of the conference. So we look forward to seeing you during the conference, and have a wonderful rest of the day.